Boy says the teacher did it again. Dad calls 911 immediately. But first, remember to subscribe to our channel so we can keep sharing incredible stories. 8-year-old Sam hadn't been himself for weeks. Michael, his father, had watched his once cheerful boy become increasingly withdrawn and quiet. Sam seemed to dread school, clinging to Michael at the door each morning, his small face clouded with an unspoken fear. At first, Michael thought it was a phase. Maybe Sam was struggling with a tough subject or having issues with friends. But this was different. His son's mood was heavier, and he seemed haunted by something he couldn't or wouldn't talk about. One evening, as Michael was cleaning up after dinner, he found Sam sitting on the couch, staring blankly at the television, his shoulders hunched and his hands nervously twisting the hem of his shirt. Michael sat down beside him, gently placing a hand on his shoulder. "Sam," he began softly, "is everything okay at school? You know you can tell me anything, right?" Sam's eyes darted to his father, then down to his hands. He hesitated, his lips parting as if to speak, but then he looked away, his face flushing with discomfort. Michael's heart sank. Something was wrong, something big enough to weigh on a child's mind like this. After a long silence, Sam finally spoke in a barely audible voice. "Dad, he did it again." Michael's heart skipped a beat. "Who did what again, Sam?" he asked, his voice steady but his mind racing. He hadn't expected this, hadn't prepared for the rush of dread that now filled his chest. Sam swallowed, his small hands trembling as he clutched the couch cushion. "Mr. Collins," he whispered. "He did those things again." Michael's breath caught. He had no idea what exactly Sam was trying to say, but the look in his son's eyes, the way he shrank into himself as if trying to disappear, was enough to make Michael's skin prickle with unease. "Sam," Michael said slowly, choosing his words carefully, What things did Mr. Collins do?" For a moment, Sam only shook his head, a tear slipping down his cheek. Michael felt a surge of protectiveness. Whatever was happening, he had to get to the bottom of it. He had to make sure Sam felt safe and heard. Taking a steadying breath, Michael reached for his phone. "I'm calling the police," he said, his voice firm, more to reassure Sam than himself. "This is too important, Sam. We're going to get help." Sam looked up, his face a mixture of fear and relief. Michael held him close, feeling the gravity of the moment pressing down on him. He would do whatever it took to protect his son, no matter where this path led. The police arrived within minutes, their presence filling Michael's living room with an air of tense seriousness. Sam sat quietly beside his father, his small hand clinging tightly to Michael's as two detectives entered. One of them, a woman named Detective Avery, knelt down to Sam's level, her expression soft and approachable. "Hi, Sam," she greeted gently, her voice warm but professional. "I'm here to help you. I know it's not easy to talk about these things, but you're really brave for sharing this with your dad. Can you tell me a little more about what's been happening with Mr. Collins?" Sam's eyes flicked up to Michael, and he squeezed his father's hand as if drawing strength from him. With a hesitant nod, he began to speak, his words coming in halting, whispered fragments. Detective Avery listened carefully, nodding encouragingly and asking gentle questions to help him along. Slowly, the story began to unfold, a series of moments that Sam didn't fully understand but knew made him feel uncomfortable and frightened. Michael's face grew pale as Sam's story came together. Hearing the specifics made it painfully clear that Mr. Collins had been crossing boundaries in ways that went far beyond appropriate behavior. Michael's heart broke at the thought of his son carrying this alone, his tiny shoulders burdened by a weight no child should bear. Once Sam finished, Detective Avery thanked him for his courage and suggested that he take a break. She exchanged a look with her partner, Detective Reyes, who gave a barely perceptible nod. Mr. Collins has been teaching at Sam's school for a few years now, Detective Avery explained to Michael as Sam went to his room. We're going to need to handle this carefully. Cases involving teachers are complex. There's a lot of trust involved, and we don't want to disrupt things for the students any more than necessary. Michael nodded, feeling both anger and helplessness. So what happens now? He asked, his voice taut with the strain of holding back his emotions. We'll need to speak with the school administration and discreetly interview other students who might have had similar experiences with Mr. Collins, Detective Avery replied. If other students have felt uncomfortable, they might open up now that one of them has come forward. The goal is to get a broader picture without causing unnecessary alarm. Michael felt a sickening mixture of anger and sadness, but he was grateful for the detective's calm professionalism. Sam had been so scared, but he had spoken up, and now there were people who could help. It was a small comfort, but it was something. Thank you, he said quietly, feeling the weight of what was to come. I just want my son to be safe. Detective Avery nodded, her face serious. We'll do everything we can, Mr. Thompson. You and Sam are not alone in this. As the detectives prepared to leave, Michael found himself filled with a newfound determination. He would follow this case through, no matter how long it took or how difficult it became. Sam's trust in him and the relief on his face when Michael called the police were enough to give him strength. Whatever it took, Michael would make sure no other child had to go through what Sam had endured. The following days were a whirlwind of tension and secrecy. The police kept their investigation as discreet as possible, but rumors started to ripple through the school. Some parents noticed officers entering the building, and questions arose among the children, whispers of Mr. Collins and trouble spreading quickly. Although Michael did his best to keep Sam's involvement quiet, he knew the truth could only be hidden for so long. Detective Avery and her team interviewed several students, meeting them in a comfortable room decorated to help them feel at ease. One by one, other children began to share stories, small but troubling details that painted a picture similar to Sam's experience. Mr. Collins was known for his friendly, relaxed attitude, but some of his actions had crossed a line, actions that the young students didn't fully understand but instinctively felt were wrong. One of the students, a girl named Lily, described how Mr. Collins would often single her out, keeping her after class to help with homework. Her parents hadn't questioned it, thinking she was just struggling with her studies. As she spoke to Detective Avery, her voice wavering, Michael couldn't help but feel his anger boil beneath the surface. This teacher had manipulated not only the children, but also the trust of their parents, using his position to isolate his victims. Over time, more parents began to speak out, contacting the detectives with their own concerns and stories. The school administration, once seemingly oblivious, was now under scrutiny, forced to cooperate with the investigation. The principal, a no-nonsense man named Mr. Hendricks, issued a statement to the parents acknowledging the investigation but withheld details, hoping to maintain a semblance of order within the school. Michael, meanwhile, became a central figure among the parents, a reluctant but determined leader who was driven by the need to protect his son and the other children. Meetings with the detectives turned into gatherings with other concerned parents, all sharing a common outrage and a unified demand for justice. Together, they insisted on accountability from the school, challenging a system that had allowed Mr. Collins to operate unchecked. Yet despite the growing outcry, there was an unsettling silence from Mr. Collins himself. He continued to show up at the school, his demeanor seemingly unchanged, as though he were untouched by the accusations building around him. Michael and the other parents watched in frustration, feeling helpless as the man who had betrayed their trust continued his daily routine, walking the halls and smiling as if nothing were amiss. The sight of him strolling so confidently through the school felt like a slap in the face, Michael knew that legally the detectives needed solid evidence before they could take any drastic action, but the waiting was excruciating. Every day that passed without resolution felt like an eternity, and every time Michael saw Mr. Collins, he felt the same anger and protectiveness surge through him. He couldn't rest until he knew his son and every child in that school was safe from harm. The investigation was reaching a critical point, but without a concrete lead or witness willing to stand in court, everything remained frustratingly out of reach. Michael knew they were close, but he also knew that one misstep could cause the case to unravel. In the face of these challenges, he resolved to support the investigation in any way he could, holding tightly to the hope that justice would soon be served. The pressure finally reached a breaking point one Friday afternoon. Michael had come to the school to pick up Sam, only to spot Mr. Collins exiting the building, walking with that same air of untouchable confidence. Unable to hold back his frustration any longer, Michael crossed the parking lot, intercepting the teacher with a look of steely determination. "Mr. Collins," Michael called, his voice sharp. Mr. Collins stopped, his face expressionless as he turned to face Michael. "Yes," he replied, feigning innocence with a slight smile that only fueled Michael's anger. Michael clenched his fists, struggling to keep his composure. "You know exactly why I'm here. You should be ashamed of yourself. I know what you've been doing to my son and the other children, and I'm not the only one who knows." For a moment, a flicker of something passed across Mr. Collins's face, a flash of irritation, or maybe even fear. But it was gone as quickly as it had appeared. He shrugged, his smile widening, a smug expression that sent a chill down Michael's spine. "You parents are always so quick to judge," Mr. Collins said coolly, his tone dripping with condescension. "You think you know what goes on, but you don't. Maybe your son misunderstood something. Kids exaggerate, you know." Michael's jaw tightened. "Don't you dare blame my son. Sam knows exactly what happened. You've betrayed the trust of every family in this school." By now, a few other parents were gathering nearby, their faces mirroring Michael's anger and disbelief. Among them was Lily's mother, who had recently learned of her own daughter's experience. Her face was set in a look of fierce determination, and she joined Michael, standing shoulder to shoulder with him as a show of solidarity. Sensing the growing crowd, Mr. Collins's bravado started to falter. He glanced around, his gaze shifting nervously as he seemed to realize that his position might not be as secure as he had assumed. His expression darkened, his confidence slipping away. "Listen," he muttered, his tone losing its earlier arrogance. "I have a spotless record. No one has any proof. You're all just angry parents with wild imaginations. Good luck proving anything in court." As he turned to walk away, Michael felt a surge of determination. He couldn't let this man escape unchallenged. Recalling some of the conversations he'd had with the other parents, he took a deep breath, his voice firm and clear as he addressed the crowd. "We'll get proof, Mr. Collins. We're not letting this go." With that, the group of parents watched as Mr. Collins walked away, his steps quickening as though he was beginning to realize the gravity of his situation. That evening, Detective Avery updated Michael and the other parents on the latest findings. After speaking with more students, the detectives had uncovered a disturbing pattern of complaints, enough to justify a more formal inquiry with the school board. They would be filing an official report, which meant Mr. Collins was likely facing a suspension pending investigation. As the call ended, Michael felt a glimmer of hope. The confrontation with Mr. Collins had been tense, but it had finally rattled him. Michael was more certain than ever that justice was within reach. A few weeks later, the investigation reached its conclusion. After carefully reviewing the evidence and hearing testimonies from multiple students and parents, the school board made a decisive announcement. Mr. Collins was formally dismissed, and criminal charges were being filed against him. The news spread quickly, bringing a mix of relief and outrage to the community. Relief because the children were finally safe, and outrage because the system had failed to protect them sooner. For Michael, the decision marked the end of an exhausting ordeal. He had spent countless nights worrying, rallying other parents, and pushing authorities to take action. Now he felt a weight lifting from his shoulders. Sam, who had been quietly watching everything unfold, seemed to sense his father's relief. The boy's demeanor began to shift, the light in his eyes slowly returning as he felt safe once more. One evening, Michael sat down with Sam in his room, pulling him close. "I'm proud of you, buddy," he said softly. "You were so brave to speak up. Because of you, other kids are safe now." Sam looked up at him, a mix of emotions flickering across his face. "I was scared, Dad. I thought no one would believe me." Michael hugged him tightly. "I'll always believe you, Sam. You did the right thing, and I'm so proud of you for it." As time passed, life gradually returned to normal for Sam and the other children. The school implemented new policies to ensure that a situation like this would never happen again. Teachers and staff underwent additional training on recognizing and reporting inappropriate behavior, and a counselor was made available for any student who needed support. But the experience left a lasting mark on Michael and the other parents. They had learned the importance of staying vigilant and listening closely to their children, of creating an environment where kids felt safe, speaking up about anything that troubled them. The community, once fractured by suspicion and fear, came together with renewed trust and commitment to protect their own. In a quiet moment, Michael found himself reflecting on how quickly things could have gone differently if Sam hadn't found the courage to speak out. He understood now, more than ever, the strength it took for a child to trust an adult with something so deeply frightening. As he watched Sam laughing in the backyard, playing freely again, Michael felt a deep sense of gratitude. His son was safe, and the family could finally start to heal. And in that peaceful moment, Michael made a promise to himself. He would always be there, ready to listen, ready to act. No matter how difficult, he would be his son's protector, his advocate, and his unwavering source of strength.